Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Excellent, thank you. All right, good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody. Welcome to the Introduction to NASA's Commercial SmallSat Data Acquisition Program webinar. This is your host, Jennifer Brennan. It is 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So what I will do first is begin today's webinar with a few logistics. To ensure the best audio experience, all participants have been placed in silent mode. But if you have any issues, you have any questions, what I'd like for you to do is enter those into the Q&A panel rather than the chat, located in the, should be on the right side of your screen. If you don't see the Q&A panel, click on the three dots at the bottom right corner of your screen. It might be located toward, a little bit to the middle, and then you should see your panel options and can insert a check mark next to the Q&A. Today's webinar is being recorded. The recording will be posted to our NASA Earth Data YouTube channel within a week of completion, and I think there will be another final landing place for this recording, and I will follow up with an email to all registrants and participants with a link to both the recording, any additional locations for where this recording will be posted, as well as a link to the presentation slide deck used within today's webinar. Okay, as far as timing is concerned, today's event will be 1 hour and 15 minutes long, with 45 minutes allocated to the presentation and live demonstrations. And then a 15-minute Q&A period will follow. And depending on the volume of questions that we receive, we may extend the Q&A period an additional 15 minutes from end time, but we will have a hard cutoff of 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. During this afternoon's event, we will have two speakers. Our first speaker is Dana Ostrenga. Dana is the Commercial SmallSat Data Acquisition Program Project Manager within the Earth Science Division at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. She will kick off this afternoon's webinar by providing both an introduction to NASA's role within the CSDA program and an introduction to NASA's CSDA program itself. From there, she will speak to how these commercial data sets complement NASA's observations and transition to an overview of the Earth to Action strategy and objectives. She'll discuss the types of end-user license agreements, the process for CSDA data evaluation and the criteria, and also touch upon our partnerships. And then from there, we will transition to our second speaker, Dr. Aaron Kalfus, who is the CSDA Data Manager. He's located at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. He is going to cover the data management strategy, data access and use, and provide some high-level information about the NASA CSDA program vendors' products, their availability and temporal and spatial coverage, and also provide some metrics regarding CSDA program data usage. And so before I toss it over to Dana, what I'd like to do is just say a couple of words about the Q&A session. We will try to answer all questions within the time allotted, and speakers, you should please feel free to type in a response if you're not speaking into the Q&A. But if we don't get to all of your questions, our speakers will be able to follow up with you offline. And so with that, it is my pleasure to introduce today's first speaker, Dana Ostrenga. Dana?
Thank you, Jennifer, for kicking us off. So good afternoon, morning, evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Like Jennifer mentioned, we're here to discuss NASA's Commercial SmallSat Data Acquisition Program. Next slide. In today's discussion, we'll introduce you to the commercial data program. We'll talk a little bit about Earth Action Strategy, talk about our end user license agreements, go over our data guidelines and evaluations that we conduct. We'll talk about our partnerships, talk about our scientific use cases, and then go into our data management processes, how to access the data, and go over the data with the CSDA program has available. Next slide. So let's start with why buy commercial data? The evolution in the satellite industry has been rapidly growing, especially in the area of Earth observations. Commercial Earth observation satellite systems have been developing at faster rates with ever-increasing numbers built into their constellations. They're leveraging newer technology by providing higher spatial resolution, and they have shorter revisit rates. So it's making it ideal to augment our existing government satellite data. So how does NASA fit in? Well, NASA has a really strong history with Earth observation data, a history with acquiring, enhancing, utilizing, and stewarding that data. And NASA wanted to explore the possibilities of acquiring and integrating commercial data with our agency partners to support research and application initiatives. Next slide. So that brings us to the Commercial SmallSat Data Acquisition Program, or CSDA. The mission of the program is to focus on identifying, evaluating, and acquiring commercial satellite data that support NASA's Earth science research and application goals. The program has 5 main goals. 1, to establish a continuous and repeatable process to on-ramp new commercial data vendors. To enable sustained use of the data for a broader dissemination to our scientific community. To ensure long-term data preservation, access, and distribution of that data, ensuring scientific reproducibility. To collaborate and partner with interagency and international partners on the evaluation and scientific use of that data. And then, of course, to comply with the 2003 U.S. commercial remote sensing policy. Next slide. So taking a look back at the history of the program, it was started as a pilot initiative in 2017 to evaluate the feasibility to acquire and use commercial SmallSat data for the purpose to augment our existing data holdings and to find a cost-effective way to expand the data holdings to advance scientific research. In 2020, the pilot successfully ended and it began its transition into a sustained program. After bringing in new vendors through a blanket purchase agreement, the program released a Roses Call in 2022 to promote scientific use of the data, and a total of 22 proposals were awarded. In 2023, the program had moved from using BPAs of the blanket purchase agreement to using indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, or IDIQ contract vehicles. This would help promote a competitive task order environment. A total in that new contract vehicle had 7 new vendors that were awarded, and that was in October of 2023. This year, the CSDA program went through some changes, and it was moved under the Earth Action Program. It opened a solicitation for an on-ramp 1 under the IDIQ, which closed in March of 2024 and is still in progress. We are currently in several evaluations as well. Next slide. So you've heard me mention that the data acquired by the CSDA program are for the purpose of scientific research and applications. So what does that mean? Well, this means that the data will be used for non-commercial use and will follow the associated license that the data is acquired under. Research and applications are U.S. government-funded activities and are performed for the purpose to conduct experiments, evaluations, research, whether basic or applied, for the U.S. government. Can this change? Well, we are currently looking into the possibility of operational use of the data acquired through the program, and we're looking at how that will affect our current procurement and licensing structure. Next slide. Since our primary focus is on NASA's science, research, and application programs, this can cover a wide variety of science focus areas. Some of those focus areas are such as air quality, the disasters program, and how we can support those decision makers and researchers looking at various disaster events, supporting agricultural research, looking at monitoring crop production and water availability, looking at biodiversity, measuring greenhouse gases, and supporting water management, and providing data to monitor and assess impacts and risks with sea level change. Next slide. We can support these various science-focused areas by aligning the actions of the CSDA program objectives with the Earth Science to Action strategy that was released earlier this year. The strategy has the goal to advance and integrate Earth science knowledge to empower humanity to create a more resilient world. To make that implementable, there is a continual process loop where the user needs informs the initiatives of the various programs and missions. That feeds into that foundational development, including technology development, missions planned, and data collected from various sources. And that foundational base will feed into the various scientific research and applications for utilization and to provide solutions for societal benefit. And then the focus is on communication and inform the broader stakeholder community and the general public of those available resources. Next slide. So to create that continual process, two major objectives were identified in the strategic plan. Objective 1 is to holistically observe, monitor, and understand the Earth system. So how can this be achieved? Well, by creating a holistic integration of observing systems, pursuing the use of innovative technology, working with national and international partners to integrate data from various sources, and work with stakeholders, internal and external, to address questions from the science community. And then Objective 2 focuses on providing trusted information to support activities focused on Earth resilience. To achieve this, NASA will focus on developing advanced and integrated end-to-end Earth system modeling capability, co-designing solutions with various partners and stakeholders to support users, provide trusted, actionable, and science-based information, and increase the information sharing to improve awareness. So as you can see, the Commercial SmallSat Data Acquisition Program can provide data and tools to support these future initiatives to achieve these objectives. Next slide. Thanks, Erin. So looking at recent changes of the program, I mentioned the program move, but there are several other recent activities this year. The program came under new leadership. We have Melissa Martin in our CSDA Program Manager at NASA headquarters, and myself has assumed the role of CSDA Project Manager at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. We've moved further into utilizing the IDIQ contract vehicle, where competitive task orders will become more of a focus in the future. And we've established within the IDIQ contract and data use policy the three-tier EULAs, or end user license agreements. We've also started integrating our data to be discoverable through the Earth Data Search client with our other Earth Science data holdings. And we have initiated the evaluation phase for two new vendors, Planet IQ and Umbra. And we also have formed an executive board at headquarters to provide guidance to the program on future data buys. Next slide. So the three-tiered EULA structure is modeled after the National Reconnaissance Office CSPO's standardized family of EULAs. Our base license is the U.S. government license and is used currently for the scientific non-commercial use. What is constituted as U.S. federal government license? The data purchased are shareable with all portions of the U.S. government defined under Title V, the Executive Office of the President, members of Congress, and congressional staff involved in the oversight of the entities that are identified in Title V, state and local governments, territories, and tribal authorities within the U.S., non-governmental organizations and nonprofit organizations working for the purpose of the U.S. government, contractors, subcontractors, partners, and or grantees supporting the U.S. government to execute their contracts. With that said, the U.S. government plus is all the previous aforementioned entities, but also includes foreign governments, intergovernmental entities, and international defense and coalition partners working with the U.S. government for U.S. government purposes. And then finally, our third EULA, we have the public license, which just means free and open to the general public. Users will need to be verified as authorized users prior to access, and Erin will go over that in the next section with data management. Next slide. So we are working within our program to build new partnerships and enhance existing ones. We're working with interagency partners working to align our evaluation, our data buys, and agency and data requirements. We are participating in activities within JC, the Joint Agency Commercial Imagery Evaluation, and other initiatives that are guided by our agency partners. We're also enhancing our collaboration with our international partner, ESA, on developing guidelines and sharing programmatic and technological processes for commercial data programs. Next slide. As part of our previously mentioned partnership with ESA, the ESA-NASA Joint EO Mission Quality Assessment Framework was formed. ESA's EarthNet Data Assessment Project had established an Earth Observation Mission Quality Assessment Framework, and in parallel, NASA was working through its evaluation process to assess the quality and utility of the data from various vendors. Coming together, the two agencies are working to apply that framework to various sensors. Using these guidelines to assess commercial vendors ensures that the agencies can make informed decisions on data acquisition. Next slide. The first set of guidelines focused on synthetic aperture radar data has been signed by the CSDA Program Manager and ESA's Head of Mission Management and Product Quality Division. This further solidifies this collaboration, and the team is now moving forward on their next set of guidelines focused on optical data. Next slide. So taking the guidelines into consideration and helping to inform future guidelines, NASA's subject matter experts and funded PIs have been continuing the evaluation process for each vendor that is currently in the evaluation phase. The evaluation is focused on 5 criteria that looks at the data quality and utility for scientific research. The evaluation measures the accessibility of the vendor imagery and data, whether it's efficient to discover and access the data. They look at the accuracy and the completeness of the metadata, making sure it includes necessary elements to understand and utilize the data, as well as integrated in tools and search and discovery systems. They look at the quality of the user support services and whether the vendor has the right level of expertise to answer stakeholder questions and be responsive to stakeholder needs. They look at usefulness of the data and its ability to support scientific research and applications. And then the quality of the imagery, assessing data attributes such as geolocation and radiometric accuracy and platform intercalibration. All of this work is finalized and provided to the vendor in vendor debriefings and compiled in a final report that are published on our website for broader dissemination. Next slide. The current implementation of the evaluation process takes quite a bit of time, looking even at this chart, to complete the process to have a vendor move from what we call an evaluation phase to a sustained phase. This process can take anywhere from 16 to 28 months, from the beginning of the RFP to the ROSES calls to the PIs to perform the evaluation, the selection process, the award, and the actual evaluation take place, then the debriefings to the vendor and headquarters and publishing the report. We recognize this is a very lengthy process. So right now, the program is really looking at ways to streamline this and make it more efficient and cost effective. The CSDA program is continuing to evolve and will change some of its processes, as I mentioned. The program will implement a new data evaluation process that will be more efficient to put vendors in sustainment phase so that then they can respond to competitive task orders sooner. This shortened evaluation will be focused on the data quality and will be conducted by the program's subject matter experts. Separately, the data utility will still be assessed through a 2-year funded ROSES call that will provide supplemental scientific knowledge or capabilities outside the NASA Earth Science program. We expect that the next call will be released sometime later this year, and it'll be the ROSES 48. The program is exploring the options as well to support operational use, as I mentioned previously, and this will be operational use of the CSDA acquired data through the procurement process. But our primary focus will still remain on scientific research and applications. And finally, we are improving our communication strategy on the program, working to provide more awareness of the commercial vendors' data capabilities through such avenues like this webinar series. So we have 2 types of contract vehicles currently with our vendors. One is the indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, or IDIQ contract, and the other is the blanket purchase agreement, or BPA, which we are currently closing out in favor of administrating a competitive task order process with the IDIQ. We're looking at our vendors listed here in a reverse timeline order. We are currently kicking off the evaluation with Planet IQ and Umbra Lab data. We have just made selections in a recent solicitation for the PIs who will conduct those evaluations. We have 4 evaluations that are currently underway and nearing completion from the BPA on-ramp 3 solicitation. GHG-SAT completed their vendor brief out recently, and the data is now available on our website for stakeholders that qualify under that EULA, and the final evaluation report will be made available in the fall timeframe. GeoOptics and Capella Space have completed the evaluations and the briefings, and the final reports and data will be available soon. And ISI will complete evaluations this early fall. We have also completed the evaluation process for Black Sky and Airbus US, which were part of our BPA on-ramp 2 solicitation. And we have the DSIS and EarthDem data that was brought in through our pilot program early on as part of the cooperative agreement. And we have brought in Planet Inspire data through a BPA task order and Maxar data through one of our partners, NGA. Aaron will present shortly on how to get access to all the CSDA holdings and the CSDA holdings that we have in our next section. Next slide. So I emphasized a lot on the scientific research and application usage of the data. So I just wanted to show a few scientific examples using data acquired through our program and with our partnerships. So this is an example using Planet Dove data showing a classic elevation retrieval for an impact crater in the Amazon basin of Bolivia. Only partial Earth M stereo retrievals are available in this area due to very frequent cloud cover. CSDA-funded scientists used ISAT-2 and JEDI laser altimetry to establish the ground level, and JEDI to compare our 4-meter type of canopy retrievals to. And this image was produced by averaging monthly retrievals from June, July, and August 2020, 2021, and 2022. And this is a use case showing scientific results using Airbus US data. In the left, the interferometer, which is a recording of the interference pattern generated in an interferometer, shows coherent signals in agricultural fields as well as partial bullseye pattern at the geothermal plant, where you can see changes in color at different fields indicate different structure and soil moisture. This derived Airbus SAR data shows those changes in the agricultural fields. And then on the right, a series of 6 images shows the formation of the lava flows in the explosion crater during the 2021 eruption at the, I'm going to say this name wrong, so apologize, at Liwo Talak volcano in Indonesia. Time series of that data from CSDA SAR from Airbus show dynamics of that volcano activity. And CSDA achieved the ability to also map the carbon of individual trees over an area the size of Alaska and the 48 continuous states in the accuracy of plus or minus 20% for 10 billion trees in semi-arid Africa. We also developed a viewer to enable our data to be accessed from 1 tree to 10 billion trees. And this work is published in Nature magazine in the March 2023 issue by Compton Tucker and his team, titled Subcontinental Scale Carbon Stocks of Individual Trees in African Dryland. This research involved using 326,000 Maxar satellite images, 89,000 individual trees for training data, and consumed 50 million core hours on Blue Waters, which is an NSF supercomputer. The result disagreed with all previous satellite and or numerical modeling studies for the same area. And this disagreement occurred because CSDA developed the ability to perform large area mapping of discrete trees using machine learning at 50 centimeters that have been impossible to achieve previously due to spatial resolution limitations of other satellite observing systems. CSDA pioneered this work, not only assembling 89,000 trees of training data, but the aspect of the learning, but also the high performance computing to convolve an input matrix of 40 trillion elements to provide the carbon in 10 billion trees. This work is very invaluable to document and expand restoration work in semi-arid areas because it can also help verify that progress. Slide. So we'd like to talk more about the data, and to do that is our CSDA data manager, Aaron Kaufman. Aaron?
Thank you, Dana. So as Dana mentioned, I am the CSDA manager, and along with the team, helped develop the CSDA data system. And the system is being developed primarily for the goal of supporting the CSDA program's goals of archiving and reusing all of the acquired data. So to do this, we actually have a 3-phased approach that we help support. During the evaluation phase of the CSDA program, we are mirroring all of the data that's being acquired to help support those scientific evaluations into NASA Cloud. So our entire data system is built in the cloud, and this is the first step for us getting that data from the vendors there. During the sustained use phase, we actually take this data and provide search and discovery and access capabilities through our SmallSat Data Explorer, which I'll be highlighting a little bit later, and also go through that process of approving researchers to access the data according to our end user license agreements. And then finally, during our long-term preservation, we're actually working to archive all of this data alongside the NASA mission data in Earth Data Cloud. So there it would be discoverable and accessible alongside all of the other data sets that may be used in research. So I'm going to talk more about the vendor by vendor, the specifics as far as data access, but I would encourage everybody to go to our website where you can find a lot of this information and additional details. But I do want to note that most of our vendors at this point are under the U.S. Government Plus license agreement that Dana had walked through earlier. And in order to access the data, users have to go through and review and understand those license agreements so that we can provide access. Under these EULAs, there's no limits on the amount of research that can be done, nor on the amount of publications that could be made using our commercial data. There is one caveat being Maxar, in which there's additional permission steps that are required in order to publish images into the commercial or into the public space. So despite there being no limits on the amount of research, there are limits on how the data can be shared. So sharing is restricted to only those licensed users. So you can't, put data, raw data out on anonymous FTP servers or in the public space for other to get, unless that data is of a derived product. So I'll go into more specific definitions in a minute, but basically a derived product is data that has been manipulated in a non-reversible way. And as been discussed, our licensing currently is for science use only, so we are working and trying to see if we can remove that restriction on operational use as part of partnerships and within our budget constraints, but at least for the time being, operational use of the data is not allowed. So what is a derived product? So I kind of mentioned that previously, but this is a irreversible modification of the licensed material, which in this case is the raw data, such that the extraction of the principal features and characteristics cannot be reverse engineered. When users create derived products, and you can create unlimited amounts of derived products, then the data can be shared according to these licenses. The flip side to that is the value-added products. So this is where data has been modified, but through technical manipulation, the principal features or the underlying raw data could be extracted. In those cases, those value-added products may only be shared with other licensed users. They can't be put out into the public space. For all of our vendors, if you're going to publish or use these in some digital medium, some visual representation of the data in the digital medium, you should be providing copyright statements. So we have generic copyright statements that can be used for any of the different vendors, and they're provided here. We have a separate copyright statement for those raw data products and also a derived product copyright statement. And a representation can include joint statements as necessary. So if you include, for instance, just a RGB type visualization along with some derived products like NDVI, you can provide joint copyright statements. We also, as a CSDA program, request that you provide acknowledgement for use of the data within your research. And we have a generic statement here that you can just copy and paste. And we also really would like to know when CSDA data is being used. So you can reach out to us anytime, provide us DOIs or links so that we can help track and advertise and really understand how the data from the program is being used within the community. So as I mentioned, all access has to go first through a request process. We, as a program, need to verify that based on the license agreements, that you would be eligible for access to the data. Again, we are restricted to U.S. governments and their contractors for the vast majority of our data sets. The first stop to that is our authorization request form, and a screenshot of that is shown to the right, and the link here is on the page. But basically what we need provided is just some basic contact information so that we can reach back out with account information once it's been created. How you plan on using the data, that is because we want to verify that it is being used for the scientific purposes as been previously described, and then also concurrence with the end user license agreements. So those license agreements are provided within the sign-up form so that you can read them in the interface. Once a user has submitted a form, our data team received this, and we'll go through and again verify the information that's been provided, and then provide notification as well as detailed data access for those specific vendors requested. So kind of repeating this slide from before, just to give a quick overview of the data availability, we have products that have been purchased and have been mirrored to our AWS cloud that we're making available, and those are shown in the green here. We have those vendors and data products that are currently undergoing evaluation or are wrapped up already. So those we would expect to have available to the broader community within the next couple months. And then, like Dana mentioned, Planet IQ and Umbra are now undergoing evaluation. This process is just starting, and it'll be probably around a year, maybe a little bit more, before we're able to make the data acquired during that evaluation available. So to start with, I'm going to run through all the different data products that we have available in the vendors, but this is not going to be a detailed look at every different product that's available or every different vendor that's available. We'll have webinars in the future that will go into much greater detail, but I just wanted to provide a snapshot so that people can kind of get an understanding of what we have and where to go find it. So first to highlight is Planet Labs. So they provide multispectral data, primarily from the PlanetScope and RapidEye constellations. So through the Planet Explorer, we actually have full archive access to these data products. In addition, CSDA purchased a small amount of SkySat data during the evaluation activities. So we have that available through the SDX. And as far as data access, this is broadly available to U.S. federal civil agencies. So for those members from the Department of Defense or the intelligence community who may be coming through CSDA, there's some alternative means by which they can go about accessing the Planet data, which will help route to. Next up is Maxar imagery. Again, this is another multispectral image provider, and we have data from the Iconos GeoEye QuickBird and WorldView constellations. These data are accessed by request, so we have a form where you can provide us which data you would like to access. We go and search our archive to see if it is already available readily, in which case we'll stage it, and if not, we have to go back to our partners and have that data ordered, which can take a little bit of time depending on the size of the order. But these data are available through the EOCL and formerly the NextU license agreements with Maxar. So they are broadly available to the US government research community. However, CSDA really supports acquiring new data only for NASA-funded researchers. And other means such as the EVHWS platform can be utilized by users from other agencies to go ahead and download these data. And as I mentioned before, there is a public use process for publishing on these data sets. So if you are wishing to publish data visualizations in a journal article or through a presentation, a conference presentation, please fill out our public use form so that we can go and get the proper approval in order to make that happen. So continuing along, we have digital elevation model data from the EarthDEM product. This is provided by the Polar Geospatial Center. These are DEM strips and mosaics that are derived from Maxar imagery. We have a limited amount of this data, and that can be seen in the map now on the top right, where the areas available for EarthDEM are. So this was, again, a limited release of data, but it is open to US government-funded researchers. Since DEMs are not considered derived products, we do also need to go through the public release process for these as well. And finally, one of our original BPA is from Spire Global. So they provide radio occultation data. We have full global coverage and full archive access for products dating back to 2019 from Spire. These are accessible through the SDX and are open to all US government-funded researchers. And then we have Teledyne Brown Engineering. They provide hyperspectral data from the DESIS instrument. For those who may be familiar with the CSDA program, we had direct access to the full archive of DESIS data through the T-Cloud platform for a number of years. That access had recently come to an end this previous summer, and we are in the process of publishing all of the data that was acquired by PIs and mirror to our data system, and expect that to be released fall of 2024. And again, as with our others, it's open to any US government-funded researcher. So moving through the second on-ramp vendors, the first up was Airbus. Airbus was actually our first SAR vendor to be onboarded into the program. For that, we have data dating back to 2007. Again, what's available at the moment is that data that was acquired during the evaluation phase, so we have a limited archive, and all of that data is currently accessible through the SDX. Black Sky was our other vendor during the on-ramp 2 activities. Again, data dating back to 2007 for Black Sky. Their optical imagery, so similar in nature to Planet and Maxar imagery, and all of that data is available. All the data that was acquired during the evaluation is available through the SDX. So moving now to our on-ramp 3 vendors, the first to mention is GHGSat. So they are providing methane observations from their constellation. And this includes methane abundance, concentrations, as well as emissions rates for when emissions are detected. We have data going back to 2021. Again, data that was used by our evaluation team during the evaluation phase, and those are accessible through the SDX now. And coming soon, so we have 3 vendors that will be publishing through the SDX very soon. The first is GeoOptics. They provide radio occultation data, similar in nature to Spire, for those who are familiar with that. We have the full archive of products from 2020 through, or January 1st of 2020 through April of 2021, and those can be downloaded through the SDX. Again, very soon, we are actively publishing those data. Similar for Capella Space. This is an evaluation that just wrapped up. It is another X-band SAR data provider that we expect within the next month or so. That data acquired during the evaluation will be available. And then finally, we have ISI-US, again, another X-band SAR constellation data provider, limited archive, coming soon as we wrap up that evaluation. So I've mentioned the SDX a few times, and I've added this slide here so that people can grab the link and see at a high level some of the capabilities. But I'm going to skip ahead and show a quick demo of the SDX. So let me make sure this gets to playing. So what you're seeing now is the homepage for when you go to it, and you'll see all the different products that are available, as well as the license agreements and how to get started. If you're going to be downloading data, you definitely want to log in. You can see now that I already am. But then you click over to the Explore page, and there's our map-based viewer with various filters on the right-hand side, where you can go in and narrow down to the data that you want, including some very specific vendor-related filters. As long as we have it in the metadata, we can provide a filter for it. So in this case, I've clicked over to Airbus, and you can see on the map kind of this heat map feature that shows where we have data at a very high level. And you can just click on that as far as doing spatial search, provide your temporal range, either using dates, calendar, or again, a heat map type feature. and search, and you'll see in the results pane below, dynamic updating of the search results. We are in the process of really revamping the way we do data downloads. For those familiar, previously we had a CSV file and a script, but we got some feedback that these large downloads really didn't work for that method. So we've implemented a process by which data is zipped behind the scenes, all of your search results into a single file that can be accessed through this downloaded management portal. So you'll see here where I've been doing quite a bit of testing, but it just updated to show the download that I just submitted. You can see that it's processing. For those large orders that are long running, we do have some notification there, and we're actually working to set up email notifications so you don't have to continuously come checking in here. But once you're ready, you'll see that there are a few links from a batch that I had previously submitted. You just click on that and it starts downloading to your local machine. So the nice thing about that is there's fewer clicks, but as you'll see kind of in my download here, it also maintains the file structure from the vendor themselves. So if you are and have worked with these vendors in the past and developed processing around that, then you don't have to change your file paths or the way that you look for data within your current algorithms. And then all of our vendors, we do have some limits on the amount of data that can be accessed, and you're assigned a quota when you go to sign up, and you can review that and manage that just through our quota page. And if you end up needing more data, it's really just reach out to us and we can help increase your quota so that you can continue accessing data for your research. So just to wrap up with a few metrics, so what I'm showing now is just those that we've been actively providing distribution for at the time that this was updated. So Black Sky and GHGSat, some of our new vendors are not represented here. But to date, we've distributed over 500 terabytes of data to nearly 4,000 different approved users. And our total data archive is on the order of 17 petabytes and growing every day. So we have a large amount of data available for users to download. We're supporting more than 60 other U.S. government agencies and organizations as part of the CSDA program. So obviously NASA is one of our biggest users, as they were our primary user going back to the early days of the pilot program. But you can see agencies including like the USGS and National Science Foundation who are really coming and pushing their users to CSDA to access data. And I'll mention the National Science Foundation. Last year, we actually did a targeted outreach event and a notification between them in coordination with CSDA to help bring awareness. So we can definitely support working with the agencies for those types of awareness announcements to make people known that CSDA is here to provide data for them. And then we support, data that can be used across a broad range of research areas. So the optical imagery in particular that we have large archives for, tend to lend themselves to these Earth surface type studies. Hence, you can see that those are our largest users, but we do have data that supports atmospheric studies and usage that reflects that. So finally, just to summarize, the CSDA is providing commercial data that is of significant value in augmenting NASA and the partner agencies' satellite observations. We have a petabyte scale archive, and we're supporting a vast amount of agencies and research applications. We have a unique scientific evaluation process in place that is very critical for documenting the quality and informing us, NASA, on which commercial data should be acquired. But we do recognize that there is further potential to provide value to the community, and we're working with our partners and other government agencies within the bounds of our license agreements to maximize the data use. And of course, there are opportunities to work with commercial data at NASA, including through the ROSES process. So please keep an eye out for those announcements. And here's the link again. If you're looking to access or request the data, please go to our website where you can find additional information. I think with that, I'll turn it back over to Jennifer to talk about additional webinars and help us wrap up.
Okay, great. Can everybody hear me okay? So what we will do moving forward, there will be a series of continuing webinars that will focus on each of the individual vendors that are current vendors, okay? And for the time being, those webinar announcements will be posted to the Earth Data website. In the future, they will be posted in an alternate location as part of the Earth to Action Applied Sciences site. We'll have to reach out to you with that information, but again, you can find that information. We haven't determined the date for September, but do be looking at earthdata.nasa.gov for additional information. And then following that suite of webinars for focusing on the vendors, we will host webinars that will focus on how this data can be used in scientific research and applications, and focusing on some use cases and hear from our users and what kind of challenges that he, she, or they are encountering when they're using the data. Okay, so with that, what we're going to do next is I'm going to open up the final optional polling questions, and I'm going to go directly to the questions. We have a lot of questions, and just a quick word about that. Oh, shoot. I'll open the questions again and extend a bit more time. This only has 5 minutes. That won't be enough time. I'll do that in just a moment. For right now, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with those questions that were asked in the chat and then transition down to the Q&A. All right, so if you would bear with me, there's a bit of scrolling that is involved with the chat in terms of capturing the questions. So to start off with, yes, this afternoon's event has been recorded and it will be posted to our NASA Earth Data YouTube channel. There is a commercial SmallSat data acquisition program playlist. There may be an alternate location if you joined a little bit later, like within 10 minutes of start time. And again, this information will be sent out to all registrants and participants. So you'll know where to find this content moving forward for the future events. All right, let's see. Still scrolling down. I apologize for that. Okay, so let's see. Okay, here are the first two questions asked in the chat. So the first question is, are any of the satellite imagery available through CSDA free for us to download? If not, how can we purchase it? Does it have to be through a grant, organization, university, NGO, etc.?
So I'll go ahead and take that question. Right now, all the data purchased under the CSDA program are available only through the licensed agreements that we discussed throughout the presentation. Data that was purchased through the BPA agreements have a little bit more of a tailored licensing structure. That's why we wanted to go to a more simplified 3-tier ULO approach in our new IDIQ. However, with that said, we do have one vendor coming on board that we will be purchasing from, that's SAR data, and we will be having that data available to the general public as we purchase the data. Also, and so that will be released right away on our website, and so you can watch for announcements on that. Also, any of the data can be purchased directly from the vendors, and they usually do have a commercial price list on their websites. So if you are not part of one of those entities that can fall under one of the licensing structures, you can look on their website and see another approach to purchasing data.
Okay, thank you, Dana. So what I'm going to do when this 5-minute, that was by accident, when the polling question ends, I will open the same set of polls and they'll be running for the next 20 to 25 minutes or so, okay? So everyone who already responded, those responses have been captured, but then for those who haven't had an opportunity to fill it out, you will have additional time. My apologies on that. The second part of the question is, what is the pricing? And second, I guess you've kind of addressed that. Let's see here, where can I find information about the satellite resolution, the band, size, etc.? So I think the information, you know, where can they find information about the various data sets? I'm assuming, if I'm interpreting this correctly, Anna, vendor data sets, you know, the temporal and spatial coverage, et cetera, et cetera. If not, please do correct me, Anna or Anna. Let's see.
Yeah, well, I can proceed with answering some of that question. So I did mention the pricing list available on some of the vendor websites. The information on the available products that are purchased through the CSDA program, we are actually currently working on what's called data set landing pages. There, if you've ever accessed data from Earth data for any of the NASA flagship missions or any of the data that we support through our Earth Science Data Systems program, you'll see or have come across data set landing pages. They're very informative pages that talk about all the various aspects of the data, such as the resolution, the field of view, the revisit rates, any information available on that product. So what we are doing right now is collecting that information ourselves. It hasn't been collected before to that extent to populate these kind of pages, and then working with the vendors to fully populate the remaining information, and we'll be having it distributed through our website. So we're looking to have that done at sometime this fall timeframe, probably end of November.
Could I answer that, Dana? So if you go to the current CSDA website and you click on the vendor that you're interested in, it'll take you to some information. Now, what Dana said is going to be better. We'll have it much more comprehensive, but there is good information on the vendor pages under the CSDA website.
Well, thank you very much, Fritz. Okay, so I think just to see if I can be kind of balanced between the chat and the Q&A, I'll try to alternate between both. We have quite a few questions, and what we'll do is, if we don't get to your question, we will get a response to those questions, and I can try to send that information, those responses out, you know, removing the, you know, name of the question, the person who who posed the question, send that out to all registrants and participants. All right, so the next one is, we have used some Maxar images provided by CSDA. Greatly appreciate the support. I am wondering if there is a possibility to streamline the data delivery so that the requested data can be delivered sooner. Our experience suggests that it takes at least about 1 month to get the images we requested, which usually cover one small area of the study area we are interested in. Any takers?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. I think the answer is yes. We understand that it's not a straightforward process in order to get some of that data out of the archive and into our users. We are definitely working with our partners, including NGA, to try to streamline how we can get specifically Maxar data faster and out to people. So the answer is yes. We are working to improve that data delivery process. And much of the data now, if we have it in our archive and are published through Earth Data Cloud, you can go and download that data there without even having to submit a request form to us. So we can help facilitate the new method that's available to access that data. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron. The next question is coming from the chat. Are other federal government agencies, reclamation, allowed to make requests for data acquisition?
I'll take that. Yes. So the Bureau of Reclamation is a U.S. federal agency, and they can make a request for current data that we have. For new acquisitions, that's something that we would have to work through our headquarters program office. So I strongly suggest if it's acquiring any new data or any additional data to data that we have in our system, you would go directly to Melissa Martin, our headquarters program manager.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate that, Dana. The next question is the data product development guide, and there is a link provided. This is from the Q&A. Exposed to CSDA vendors.
Yep, I'll go ahead and take this one as well. So hi, Rama. Yes, we actually did provide a link and a copy of the DPDG, the Data Product Developers Guide, to our vendors in this last IDIQ on-ramp 1. I am not aware of it being, because I came into the program just in this year, so I'm not aware of it being shared with the vendors previously. But we really are working hard with our vendors right now to try to communicate as much of our standardization and best practices that our Earth Science Data System programs follow, and really share the information that we see as valuable when it comes to data product development. And that's also part of why we are working with ESA as well on these guidelines. These guidelines are shared out publicly and kind of gives an idea to the vendors what we are looking for specific sensor information.
Dana or Aaron, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, apparently I had an intermittent, and I'm in the office, network outage not outage, but like a slowed network. So I missed, have you finished responding to that question?
Yes, you can proceed.
Okay, great. So the next question is, does NASA plan to continue purchasing data from commercial vendors or fund research past the on-ramp evaluation data order?
Yeah, so we will continue. Right now, we are finishing up this IDIQ on ramp 1, and we will be looking at our next, during the next fiscal year 25, looking at our next data buy, and we'll hopefully, as long as the program is funded, we'll continue to purchase commercial data. We also, into the second part of that question, so as I mentioned in one of my previous slides, we will continue to also have solicitations for the evaluation process through PIs. So that also will be continued as part of the program.
Okay, thank you, Dana. I'm hearing audio is a little bit, we might have to just have responses typed up for most of the questions here. I'll check later. Okay, so the next question is coming from the Q&A. Is it possible to get a free trial for the data usage, maybe for 90 days before purchase of the license?
So I'll take this one too. Currently, we, in our discussions with vendors, we have not looked at acquiring data after data has been distributed and reviewed. Now, some of our agency partners do have that approach, and we are looking to, that's why we're trying to build some of those partnerships, be able to leverage some of the agreements since the data is supposed to be shared across the federal government. So that would give us the opportunity to review the data before we actually enter into an evaluation and task order process with the vendor, but we are not at that stage. So right now, currently, any of the task orders that we are releasing are generally for the evaluation purpose, and then follow on once a vendor goes into sustainment.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question coming from the chat. Will the CSDA program cover the data collected by the recently launched Planets Imaging Spectrometer Tanager 1, developed by JPL? Could you hear me?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
So the question is, will the CSDA program cover the data collected by the recently launched Planets imaging spectrometer, Tanager 1, developed by JPL?
Hi, so the way the program works is if the data is currently contracted under that vendor and part of their data catalog, we can issue a task order for that data. But since that launch had happened after the existing contractual agreements with Planet, we don't have it in our data catalog. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't be in the near future. It just means in our current contractual agreements that are active, we don't have that data available to us to purchase.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Dana. The next question is, considering other federal agency stances, for example, NRO, buy what you can, build what you must, how will increasing commercial data buys by NASA impact long-term in-house build launch plans to realize the Earth System Observatory? Were you able to hear my question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I cannot answer on how increasing commercial data buys by NASA will impact any kind of launch vehicle or any kind of platform funded through the program itself. The way that the funding comes through the program, it goes by priorities determined by the Earth Science Division, and they kind of direct the future of the programs and what kind of funding they get for each fiscal year as we get it from appropriations. So I don't know if any future commercial data buys would actually impact. I don't think that is our intent. Our intent has always been to augment existing NASA data with the commercial data. And that's kind of been our stance from the time that it's moved into, started to move into a program.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dana. So we are in our extended Q&A period. Just as a reminder to everybody, number one, thank you so much for your feedback for the within the optional polls and your wonderful questions. Our next question is going to be coming from the chat. Have there been any requests for data access denied because the proposed use was commercial in scope?
The answer is yes, but it's been a very small number. I think that's part of our review process is looking at the science use cases, and we try to, before flat out denying people, try to educate and understand their request and see if it's really in commercial use before making a decision. But we have had a small number denied for that reason, and for operational use as well.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. The next question from the Q&A, how often is the data updated?
So that's very vendor specific. For those vendors that have gone through our evaluation phase, but we're not, actively purchasing data from, then, there is no updates. In general, it's at least on a monthly basis that we mirror data that's been acquired by PIs to our archive. But there are some cases such as Spire where we have received, daily deliveries of the archive, of the new parts of the archive. So it very much depends.
Well, your response confirms what I had entered into the chat, but it's really good to have that additional clarity. So the next question is, let's see here, will the CSDA continue .gov access to PlanetScope imagery in fiscal year 25? I think last year the announcement that the program would be continued was kind of late.
So I can only answer in regards to what's currently on contract. Right now, we have a task order with Planet up to September 23rd, I believe, of this year. I can't speak to anything that happens after that time frame, but up until September 23rd, we should have access to the Planet data. Just being respectful of anything stated, it's a procurement issue, so that's why I can't speak to anything beyond that time period.
Yes, thank you. Understood. Thanks so much, Dana. The next question is, how soon after submitting an access request should people expect to hear back on if the request was accepted or not, and how to download the imagery?
So this is typically within a couple days. Caveats being, if we have, a large amounts of requests coming in, it may take longer just to get through everybody's verification and validation process. And the other caveat to that is it depends on how complete the information we get from our users are. If the information is just hard to verify or we're not getting, a complete application filled out, then it may take longer for us to help fill in those gaps to do the verification. And if you haven't heard back within that amount of time, I would encourage, reaching out to our team so that we can help expedite that process.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aaron. The next question from the chat, what is the latency for an image being available on SDX?
I think that kind of goes back to the data update question where it's very vendor specific. If we're only mirroring data, once a month from Planet, for instance, then, it would at least be that level of latency plus, a day or so for it to actually go through our publication process.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, let's see, is or will there be a dedicated stack catalog for the data available through the CSDA archives?
Yes, so actually the SDX, the search and discovery aspects are all made possible by a stack catalog, and there is a API on top of that as well. So we have not historically, advertised that as a search discover option, but there is a stack catalog available.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me jump back to the chat here and see if I have, wait just a minute. All right, here. There are more questions in the chat. Okay, then let's see.
Sorry, Jennifer, I have a quick follow on, Aaron.
Yes.
Aaron, also in the Earth Data Search client, there is a stack capability. So as our data migrates over there, right? Okay.
Yes. Yes, CMR, the metadata catalog that powers our data search, also has a stack extension. So any data available there would have a stack capabilities too.
Okay, thank you. And so the next question is, what is the difference between downloading Maxar images with SDX and using the web request form?
So there are currently not Maxar images within the SDX. Pretty much all of our other vendors are. So the web request form is the only access method at the moment, and basically you provide us your either very specific Maxar scenes that you would like or some search parameters, and then we'll go back and provide and stage those data for you to download.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. The next question is, since much of this data are in the cloud, is there a way to get direct cloud native access to plug the data into cloud computing without downloading data locally?
So data that's in the SDX, we are currently not supporting that, but as we migrate the data to our data cloud, that is becoming an option. So we've had to do quite a bit of infrastructure to provide authentication authorization around these data because they are restricted according to the license agreements. So that work is continuing so that we can enable this, but I would say in the near future, yes, you should be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, are there any API access options through these various vendors?
Yes, so currently the requirement for our vendors that we are on contract with, they have a requirement for an API, and then under IDIQ, they're required to have not only an API, but a UI, user interface for people to access the data through. And that is, of course, for, in our instances, anyone that has that authorization to access the data. But yes, there are currently API capabilities, and we've shared with them during the contracting phase a standardized API that's been developed by OGC.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dana. The next question is, as a prospective data provider for the commercial SmallSat data acquisition program, I am curious about how SDX gains access to our data store. It appears that we do not have to change our internal storage structure or how we deliver data for commercial purposes. Is SDX simply making API calls in the manner that we as commercial vendor outline, or are there specific connection requirements that we must meet?
So for the SDX and the data that's in the SDX, this is all data currently anyway that has been mirrored to NASA Cloud. So for vendors that are within the program, our data team will work to set up connections between the vendor data system and our AWS so that the data can be provided. Having said that, I think we are exploring exactly what's being discussed here as far as making direct API calls. And that could be just to provide search discover capabilities or enable access, depending on what our license agreements and contracts allow. So we're not there yet as far as the SDX just making those API calls, but it is something that we're investigating as the program evolves.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. The next question is from a user wanting to know how he, she, or they can get the Planet access to the data extended. Like, what is the process for that?
I think I am currently answering that one in the chat.
Okay, great. Then I can move on to another one if you'd like. Okay, and so let's see. Let's see here. One of the questions is, will any additional DSIS data be added to the CSDA collection?
Yeah, so DSIS was one of the vendors that we had that was under a cooperative agreement. The cooperative agreement ended, and because the program had moved purely to a contractual type program using those IDIQ contract vehicle, DSIS would have to come on to that contract vehicle. So stay tuned. We do, have announcements of new awardees coming out soon for on-ramp 1. But anytime that we do have a new vendor coming into that contract vehicle, we will make that, I think I mentioned the notification, we'll put it out of those new awardees and what we anticipate coming in the near future.
Okay, thanks, Dana. We probably only have time for another question, possibly two. Who do we talk to regarding the new operational application options under the CSDA?
I would reach out to the CSDA program manager at headquarters, Melissa Martin. She is working some of those possibilities along with me and our procurement team just to see on the feasibility with our existing structure.
Is this a contact email that could be provided in the chat, or?
Sure. Or they can reach out to me. I can put both of our emails, either of us.
Okay, that sounds great.
I'll put it in the chat.
That sounds wonderful. It looks like we have time for one more question. So let me scroll down here. Does one have to be a funded Gov grant first to explore what is the available data, or can one explore what data are available and then may come up with a research topic?
So the data that's in the SDX that we already have, there is open search and discovery. So you do not have to go through the verification process as far as that goes, only to download the data.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. At this point, we have reached the end of our extended Q&A session. I think there is still, what I will do is I usually, leave the virtual meeting space open an additional 10 minutes. If you think of a question or you have something that you'd like to note in the chat, please feel free to do so. This information will be forwarded to our speakers. I think what we'll try to do is make sure that all of the questions have been answered, and perhaps we can send the Q&A responses, the questions and the responses out to participants, again, removing the personal information from those who posed the question. So let's see here. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions. There are actually quite a few, but I do really appreciate everyone's input and feedback and the questions themselves. And so with that, I'll toss it over to the speakers for any final comments, and then we'll log off from the audio component to leave the virtual meeting space opened.
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today and listening to our presentation on the Commercial SmallSat Data Acquisition Program. We really look forward to hearing your feedback on the program itself and any of your data needs with commercial satellite data.
Okay, well, thanks very much to our speakers, Dana Ostrenga and Aaron Kalfos, and with that, and Fritz Policelli for joining. And with that, we are going to log off from the audio component, and I'll leave the virtual meeting space open. So feel free to reach out if you have a question or you want to share any information. And thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. All right, take care, everybody. Goodbye now.